What is up, all you real estate loving individuals? This is episode number 14 of the Real Estate Take podcast, and I'm your host, Wendell Butler. This is your go-to podcast with tons of information regarding the current real estate market, where we get various real estate professionals' current take on different areas of real estate. For today's guest, we have Adam Cozzolino. Let me pull up his bio. Adam Cozzolino grew up in Jacksonville, North Carolina, due to his dad being in the Navy, but all of his family is actually from upstate New York. Adam has been an entrepreneur since he can remember, and Adam is currently a Smoothie King franchisee, which are delicious. I love those. And he also develops real estate in the Carolinas. So let's bring in Adam. Adam, how are you doing today?
Good, man. How are you? Thanks for having me.
Yeah, anytime. It's been a long time coming because we've always been connected and stuff, and I don't know why I haven't asked you. And you actually reached out to me, and you're like, dude, let me on your podcast. I was like, oh, yeah.
I saw your post. I was like, yeah, let's do it.
I forgot that you do real estate. It's awesome to have you on here. Me and Adam, actually, we've been trying to find some properties together, and I've been actually learning from Adam and asking him to teach me more about building and kind of the underwriting that goes with new builds, because I would love to get into that as well, and we'll dive into that more with Adam. But to get started, can you just dive into a little bit about yourself? What got you into real estate, and what's like your backstory?
Yeah, man. So like I was telling you, like I've been an entrepreneur probably since I really can remember. I was mowing lawns, stuff like that growing up, did the whole eBay selling thing, flipped cars in college, went into taxes, was going to open up a tax franchise, decided to open Smoothie King after college, and then kind of always known that I wanted to get into real estate. So like we'd be at McDonald's, and when I was younger, I'd be like, Mom, like, where's the owner at? And she'd be like, well, they're not here. Like, they just have someone to run it for them. I'm like, why wouldn't everyone do that? And similar to like some apartment complexes actually that were being built. And then I would ask, so I was probably 11, 12 years old asking these questions. I'm like, so someone's building these and then going to rent them out, and they're going to pay all their bills for them and make money. And they were like, yeah, but it's not that easy, and X, Y, Z. And I was like, why wouldn't everyone at least try to do that? So like it's been ingrained in me for years since I was younger, and I knew I needed some sort of platform to gain some capital in order to get into real estate. So that's kind of why I went to with a franchise, was diving into that world. And so I've had Smoothie King for 8 years now. I was gonna dive in and then dive into real estate, and COVID came and things went crazy. I wasn't seasoned enough to understand what the interest rates were doing and what the market was actually, how it was reacting to something like that. So I kind of like pumped the brakes there for a little bit, and then dove in almost 2 years ago, actually like full-time real estate. At first I was going to do some BRRRRs, similar to kind of what you've done in the past. And I just started talking to everybody, going to these meetups, a couple a week for probably 6 to 8 months straight there for a little bit. And everyone was moving from either wholesaling to developing or flips to developing. And so I saw everyone kind of moving away from like the flips, the BRRRRs, and even some people are doing build to rent or build to Airbnb. And that sounded a lot more attractive because you're doing flips and you've done them before. You run into stuff that might eat your profit, kill the deal type of thing. So kind of wanted to do something that was more solid numbers from the get-go. And there's not going to be much something happening. You dig into a wall, right? And you might have termites there that you didn't know about, and now you've got that cost associated to the projects. So I kind of ended up going with just developing, and I'm pretty happy with that decision.
Yeah. Well, first of all, I mean, you just asking those questions to your parents when you were 11, they were probably like, who the hell is this guy? And why is he asking these questions? They're like, they probably haven't even thought about that. And they're like, oh, probably think about that more. But that's cool. Yeah. I mean, that's the thing about new build. That's why I want to get into new builds as well on some of them, because you do start from more of a like clean slate, and you know what you're building. You don't come into a property that's already been built that might have issues, might have permanent issues. Like, you're starting ground zero and you're building it the way that you want to, and pretty much the exact cost that it's going to be.
Exactly.
And like, you don't really run into like different things that make your budget change a lot. I guess the market could do it like randomly, like could be more, but that's the same with flips. Like things end up being more or less. You just budget with that with a contingency, but you're not like opening a wall, like you said, and finding like, oh wow, this plumbing is horrendous, or there's mold all throughout here that needs to be removed remediated. It's a lot more clean slate, which is why it is a phenomenal way to invest and get into real estate. Now, people will say like building, a lot of people don't get into building because they think it's super complicated, right?
Right.
And you started out with one of the most, I would say, complicated on paper. Like when people look at it, they're like, oh, it's probably so hard to build, or there's a lot of hurdles to jump through. What was your mindset going into it? And did you know like the hurdles or like how to get through them? Did you have mentors that you met that kind of helped you figure out how to complete the process more efficiently? Because a lot of people won't get into new builds because they think the permit process is so long. There's a lot of red tape around zoning and how to build, etc. So I want to shine a little bit of light on that and what you've learned so far.
Yeah, for sure. So I didn't really have a mentor, so to speak. I was really going to all these meetups and asking all the questions you can think of, like, where's the red tape at? What do I need to look for? And it took me probably close to 9 months until I felt comfortable knowing kind of what to expect in some of this. It all comes down to learning the UDO. So every county is going to have a unified development ordinance. So you're going to dive into that, see basically what you can build. And then every county and also every city, town has zoning ordinance. So you're going to want to look into that as well. And those are really the two biggest things, kind of get going and understand the dirt is even worth it pursuing if based on the UDO, based on the zoning, what you can build there and kind of going from there. And then the one hurdle I think I really had was that I kind of had to like dive into was like hard costs on the actual vertical build. So like, so vertical is building ground up. When I say vertical, that's starting with foundation and going up. Horizontal costs are a little easier to figure out because that's just your dirt costs. What are the trees going to cost to tear, knock down? If you need to clear anything, those are a little easier. You can make a couple phone calls to some of these clearing guys and even demo guys if you have to tear down a house, and it's pretty dry like right there. But when it comes to the vertical, you're getting into what finishes are you going to use? What fits the area that you're going to build in? Are you trying to go super low end builder grade? Are you going to go kind of middle right above it? Or are you going full out custom? And so that can range from anywhere from like, I'd say $110 a square foot on the build cost for something super builder grade, all the way up into mid to high 200s for a custom build. So it's pretty significant there. Just to figure out that piece was kind of like something where I had to talk to a couple of GCs, and you can get some rough numbers from them. Getting started and being a little younger, you might have some hurdles as far as who's looking to help you and who's just kind of like brushing you off, if you will. So kind of gotta like pick and choose who you like talk to, who you get your advice from, and kind of honestly you're just gonna have to jump into one of these. You're not gonna know everything in and out, and that's just, I think, any business really, right? Like you're gonna have to kind of go through the process and the motions to really deep dive and understand it. Unless you do have a mentor or someone that's willing to hold your hand there. It just wasn't the case for me. Not, I'm saying it's not out there, but it wasn't the case for me in my situation. And so I actually, for my first deal, I had a partner that had done a bunch of flips already, and he came from a wholesaling background, and he actually took a development class. So he had some knowledge and stuff that I didn't particularly have. So that's kind of like, he was in way someone I could lean on for some of these answers, having done some of this stuff. So I would definitely recommend partnering up on your first couple. Get your feet wet, just learn by doing. Honestly, I think is the best way to learn almost anything.
Yeah, and I agree with that. I mean, when you actually do something, that's when you learn the most. You can read, you can look at stuff, you can watch videos all you want, and it's just gonna information overload yourself to possibly either you get an analysis paralysis and you're like, oh my god, so many things go wrong, because everybody talks about things that goes wrong, but
Exactly.
you just gotta, now you know the things that could go wrong, so now you have the opportunity to maybe catch those as you start going. And then you learn the most from just doing it. Like even with flips, with rental properties, with new builds, you'll never learn all that you can unless you just go in and do it. And then you just want to make sure the numbers kind of make sense and there's a little cushion, probably an extra cushion for your first one,
Yeah.
that you're going to make mistakes. Like, do you want to run through through a little bit on your first deal and how that went? Maybe like if you remember the numbers on it, just explain kind of what your mind was at and how it ended up finishing up. If you ended up making money from it, breaking even, if you lost a little bit. Like the thing about the first one is like it's not about hitting a home run. It's just about not going bankrupt. Basically,
Yeah.
it's like a free college class, and you just like learned. And then I bet your next one was like much better and much better and much better. So if you want to break that down for us and kind of, just one that you remember that was really awesome.
Yeah. So I mean, I do remember my first one, and so it was a septic lot, which definitely, I don't recommend septic. I stay away from it now. I understand why a lot of people stay away from it because I went through that whole process. So it was a septic lot out in Gaston County, and it was a 0.34 acres. It had a little slope to the front of the right front corner of the lot, which septics, you're dealing with drain fields and whatnot. And the lot was like a little tight. So we got into it. I had asked so many questions to other builders, and all the response was just, no, we just stay away from septic. No one would give me the tea on.
You're like, why?
Yeah, I'm like,
why?
Yeah, why not? Why no septic? And I know now, basically.
Because it can be a pain.
Yeah, so we got into that one, and the county septic permit guy, he was like, all right, you need to clear the whole lot before I can even give you a permit. And so he was like, I can probably say that you can get a 3-bed on this, but definitely a 2-bed. We already knew that our numbers were shot if we couldn't get a 3-bed. So we were like, all right, well, here we go. And so spent like $15,000 just to clear, because it was super wooded on the lot. And so spent like $15,000 just rolling the dice, honestly. And he ended up giving us a 3-bed permit. And so we're good on the numbers there. Didn't expect to have to clear the whole lot. So went a little over budget on the tree clearing. But we had some built in there. And so we get to building. Well, before that, I had to bring in another $8,000 dirt. So didn't really factor that in either.
That's like to grade it and make sure that it's flat so you can like
So like our GC that we ended up going with didn't really want to do a crawl on it. We were going to, and then he was like, it'd be easier just to bring in some. So we were like, it's our first one, sure,
cool.
So go for it. And so brought in that dirt. We basically get the whole project, the build done, all the vertical work done. And then it's probably about 70% done. And our GC got a call from the county erosion guy. So we had to get some erosion control done. So they made him, it wasn't really like a trench, but came all the way from the back right corner of our lot, had to come around the left side of the lot and go out to the road. And so it was basically just the water runoff from that back side of the lot wouldn't come against the structure.
Is that from like rain, or is there like a river back there or something?
It's just rain. Just because it was like sloped back there. It was a little higher ground. They made us do like a little trench, if you will, like a man-made little stream sort of situation. So they made us do that. And so that held us up a little bit. And so then we go to do septic, and our septic guy comes out and he's like, oh, we're gonna have to change the whole permit. And we're like, what do you mean we're gonna change the whole permit? So it went from septics are like $8,000 to $12,000 roughly. Ours went to $27,000 system.
Jesus. And you want to actually describe, before we hop off that topic, like some people think that septic is just tank, but it's not. It's like a tank, and then there's like leach fields, so you have enough space for the liquid to come out too. And then the tank just holds a solid portion of it. So you got to make sure like the liquids don't get into like and contaminate like other pipes and things like that. That's where it gets crazy, right?
Yes. So like we couldn't have the field. Sometimes they call it a drain field, just because it comes out and it's literally just like pipes, if you will, that shoot out from the system, and there's a pump on the septic system itself to like pump all that out. And so you couldn't go under the erosion control that we had to basically install. And so we had to go a different route, and that's kind of where we had to get a different system, because we weren't going to be able to do what the GC originally planned to do, just because of the erosion control. So we couldn't go under there. And then there's also a setback from the structure to the septic system.
Yeah.
And so you have to be within that setback area. And that kind of was pushing us to close to the back of the house. And so like the county guy for the building permit and then our septic permit, they were like on a different page. So they were like, oh no, you can't dig this up. The erosion control has to stay there. And the septic guy was like, well, we have to dig this up and we have to go through here. And we were like, oh, so what are we going to do? Like just nothing. And so the county guy basically just advised us to have the septic guy who installed the septic come back and grade to make it more level for the drain field so that we wouldn't be going into the erosion control there.
Yeah.
And so he was able to come back and he did grade it out. But it was already going to have to be a different system anyway. So he allowed him to get it more level, that it just basically wouldn't get into that erosion control line, if you will. And so that was the biggest hurdle. It didn't completely kill the deal numbers wise, but it was pretty close.
Yeah.
So we ended up selling that one in like 9 days on market. And
that's awesome.
So it was pretty quick just to get rid of it. So between the septic going 15, 20,000 over, the 8,000 in dirt, interest from our hard money from an extra because that erosion kicked us back like 2-3 weeks before they put a pause on the job, right?
Yeah.
And so it was like 2-3 weeks before they even came back out after like we had the erosion done. So that like pushes back a little bit, and we were so far deep already with draws on the loan, and that interest just start to pile up on that back end as soon as you've drawn almost the full project there. So with all that, we didn't walk away in the red, but we didn't walk away in the super green.
You guys are like, that was a good learning lesson.
Yeah, it wasn't break even, so like at least we made something, right? And learned a ton.
Yeah.
Learned everything from the very beginning of clearing the lot to building it to doing draws on the hard money, finding that all out, going through the process of selling it. It's all about really a learning experience on that one. So
yeah, and like you learned a lot about septic tanks too, which I'm not gonna say like everybody should always stay away from septic. Like there's some like custom homes and things like that, like out in like the boonies that someone wants like a sick house, like that's gonna be on septic. And you're gonna be able to make a huge profit there because like say you're gonna build like $1 million house, that's probably going to be on septic. Those scenarios, I'm like, okay, just deal with it and just make sure you understand what's really going to go on with the septic. But the ones that are quicker and like you don't have like as much as time to deal with, I would say try to stay away from septic. For me personally, that's the way I look at it. And I do the same with flips. I'm like, I just don't want septic because you don't know the condition of the septic. You don't have x-ray vision. You can't just like, look at the ground and be like, oh, that thing's shot. You have to like get someone out there. They have to do some tests. They have to be like, it might be good. It might not be. And then all of a sudden, middle of the project, you can go to shit. And then, like you said, it's like a $15,000 cost if you have to replace it. Sometimes even more if it's like an older house that was grandfathered in and the septic was wrong. And then now you got to replace it. Now you got to do it the right way. It's like, then it could be like 25, 30. And you're like, oh my God. So yeah, me as well. I try to stay away from septic for the most part. Yeah, I would say whoever's people watching this and they're like, I'm not afraid of septic. It's like, yeah, as long as you understand what's going on and you're doing like a custom, like a nice house and you really know what's going on with the septic, like sure.
Yeah, and have a bigger lot, I would say. Like I would do over half an acre at least, and then specifically no lot that slopes to the front. Because if it slopes to the back, you can just run that drain field to the back, but just because of gravity. But if it's to the front, you might run into some erosion control there. And I literally think I had like the hardest lot for my first project, but I don't regret it because I learned so much and I wouldn't have known these things unless I did it really.
Yeah, it's things you don't even think about, like erosion. Like
you're
like, what? You're like, I gotta make like a trench or whatever. So like why? And they're like, because eventually like if water keeps running near your house, it could like move your house or mess with the foundation and stuff. It's like, oh
yeah, I'll have to grab some. I think I've got pictures of it. I'll send it to you.
Yeah,
you can see that.
Yeah, we'll have to. But yeah, that's an amazing first like deal. Just just from a learning sense, just hopping in and just getting it done, and then just expect to run into issues. Like nothing goes perfect. I'm sure even the
Yeah.
ones you do now, like things pop up and you're like, but I've dealt with this before. You're like, I know what to
Yeah.
do. Like it happens. And same with like fix and flip, same with rentals. But it's all about jumping in and just getting going. Like nothing's going to be perfect in real estate.
Yeah, exactly.
But awesome. Yeah. So let's go a little bit more on kind of what you're thinking about on the future too. So you currently focus on building. Do you do more custom homes? Do you do more like spec homes? Like what's your specialty?
So like my niche right now is right above spec. So I'm doing quartz countertops and tile in the bath. And so it's like a little above spec. So spec, when I think of spec, it's tub inserts, no tile, probably granite countertops, nothing crazy for fixtures wise. But I'm kind of going more of a higher end name brand appliances, nothing crazy, right? And maybe some different cool light fixtures and stuff like that, just to like make it stand out a little and it really not be your Ryan Homes out here that just looks like everything else being built. So I'm kind of like in that little niche right there and sticking around the probably like 300 to 400,000 price range. So like 3.2s, 1,200 to 1,600 square feet, depending on the market. That's just where I've seen there's a lot of like action in that range as far as it being, for one, affordable with interest rates starting to come back down right now. But that's just like where the average person can afford a house in this market is in that little pocket. And I think it starts to drastically diminish the percentage of potential homeowners as higher as you go, as you can imagine. So like the bigger the buyer pool, better to develop. And it's kind of like this, similar to what you're flipping right now, like that entry level for a buyer.
Yeah. Say like spec homes are more like starter homes that people try to do, like first ones to get in. They're not like really great. They're not bad, but like they're first one to get in. You're going for like kind of like not second, maybe like a second home, I guess, like the upgraded home after that one. Like say if someone moved to a spec home and they're like, we need something else, something better.
Yeah.
It moves up to there. Plus it's just a little bit like better finish. And I mean, it's probably a lot more structurally sound, because I'm not going to say Ryan Homes is the worst, but yes, they do cheaply build the structure and then they finish the inside pretty much the same around. Like if a tornado came, it could probably take it down pretty easily.
Yeah, exactly.
But that's just how building is nowadays. I mean, the new builds back in like the 1900s, so like those were made out of like freaking, I don't know,
200-year-old wood.
Yeah, like wood that just cannot be like affected by anything.
Yeah, exactly.
But yeah, I find that price range of like 200,000 to like 400,000 is perfect in this market, because people can still afford it. You get a good buyer pool, you get strong buyers, because it's usually people with good incomes that are trying to get their first home or maybe like an upgrade to the second home. I find that anything from like 500 to like 700 is a little bit more complicated, because it's not like to the point of being luxury. It's like in between luxury and what you're building, which is like a perfect, really nice starter home. And like what I'm flipping, like perfect, like nice starter homes or second homes. That kind of gray area of like that 500 to 700 is, I just don't think there's as many buyer pool like in that pool.
I agree with that.
Yeah. And then once you go above that, it's like luxury finish, and there's a different type of buyers for those, which are always around. But yeah, I get what you're saying on that. Is that what you found too, kind of? Have you built one and try to sell it at like that price?
No, I haven't, but I've kind of kept the pulse of the market and seeing what other people are building and they're being successful at. And so realistically, I'm trying to get to build to rent or build to Airbnb. Mm-hmm. So like I kind of want to like nail this niche down, and I don't really want to like stray from it too much, because like you said, I mean, that's the bigger the buyer pool, the starter home, even for rentability, right? Like it's that perfect, like a 3-2, that's what everyone's looking for right now. Mm-hmm. You got 1 or 2 kids, you don't really need that 4 or 5 bedroom home to rent even. So it's kind of like I've seen like successful people are doing, and so I don't want to recreate the wheel, right? I just want to just be successful like everyone else, and not like jump out of my comfort zone, really. Not that getting out of your comfort zone is bad, but you can really probably get burned if you jump into that, especially that gray area, right? And I mean, depends, I guess, where in the country you're at too, because let's be honest, there's probably 3.2s even in Charlotte market, in Plaza, South End, Valentine, South Park area that are probably in that 500 to
Oh yeah.
700,000 range, right? And so I think it also depends on the area that you're building in. Kind of, I think where even you're focused on is the outer metro area, and that's kind of where those numbers are going to come in. That 300,000, say, average price point for like a 3.2, 1,500 or so. So yeah.
Yeah, and you got to think too, like everybody's talking about it now with the market. It's like supply is down, but it's still a decent amount of demand that's going up. There's not a lot of like houses on the market. So
Yeah.
as you build and you have a brand new build that's structurally sound and really well done, and it's in that price range of the 300 to 400,000, you're already like ahead of someone. Even if I did a flip and it's from like it's like a 1980s house that I flip, it's in between 300 to 400,000. Like the buyer is probably going to go for that new build compared to the flip, I would think. So you're also competing with like flippers that are doing stuff. You're competing with other new builds, and you're helping solve a problem, which is a supply problem, by bringing new housing to the market and helping out buyers that are looking to move the Charlotte area, which is one of the fastest growing cities too. So it's a perfect place to do what you're doing.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, and you too. There's always opportunity for that going on, and sounds like you've got that pretty much down over there.
Yeah, trying. But yeah, so you want to stray into more. Also, I want to touch on something else you said. So you mentioned like you don't want to stray too far away from your niche, which I think is super important in real estate, especially investing. You want to. There's a lot of like shiny object syndrome, I feel like, in real estate. Like you've probably seen it, or you've even experienced it, where you're like, oh, that looks really cool. I want to maybe try that, and then stray away from what you know and what you're really good at, and you're like, damn, why did I do that? Like, go back. You want to get really good at one thing in real estate. I feel like you can make some money so many different ways and solve so many problems in real estate. So many different ways, but you want to hone in on one thing and not be like a jack of all trades, because that way you can really grow that one niche. You have a system, a stable like business that's running and doing that. And then once that happens, then you can kind of stray from it and start doing more stuff. But I see so many times real estate investors come in and they're like, oh, I want to do like long-term rentals. I want to do like apartment buildings. Oh, I want to do a flip too. And I want to do Airbnb. I want to do mobile homes as well. And then next time I talk to them like a year later, I'm like, oh, what have you done? They've done nothing, because they're so all over the place and they haven't honed in on one thing. Yeah, that's a great point that you brought up, that you kind of want to stay within niche until you can kind of branch off from that niche slowly, which is like you said, a build to rent within that niche, or build to Airbnb, which then gets you the combination of new build active income, but also allows you to hold properties and then get that passive income and appreciation from it after.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, which is, shout out to Tommy McGill. He's crushing it in the Charlotte market. He's doing that build to rent, and so I kind of like see him doing that, and I'm like, that's where I want to get to for sure.
Oh yeah, and the good thing about build to rent too is you build like a new property and you're like, sweet, I don't have any capex expenditures or anything like that for a while. It's just pure, just sits there for like 10 to 15 years without any issues.
Exactly.
Which is awesome. Speaking of that, do you have a project going on right now that is a build to rent that you're trying to do? Is in like a three door, or are you thinking about doing it? Or
I don't have, so like on those for a build to rent, I would probably want to do it all myself. Like I wouldn't want to partner on something. So the ones I have going on right now, I have partners on. Got one down in York, South Carolina that should be finishing up in the next 2-3 weeks. And then I've got a piece of property up in Statesville. I just subdivided with a partner into, it was like a 1.15 acres. We put it, we made 3 lots out of it. So we'll be doing 3 2 1400s on that, but we'll just retail sell them. But yeah, I mean, I'm kind of like actively looking. I didn't really know the Statesville market. Like I know some of these other markets, so like I kind of shot it to a buddy, and he's like, "Oh yeah, it's perfect." He only does work. He only does flips and new construction in Statesville, and all his rentals are up there. So he knew what the market was, and he actually was like, "Well, if you don't buy this, then I'll buy it." So I was like,
wait, hold on.
Yeah, I was like, all right, well, like, yeah, let's just do it. So yeah, we just had that cleared this past week, and we should be breaking ground there within the next like 2 weeks or so. But yeah, I don't have anything build to rent right now, and I'm looking to build more capital until like I kind of am, basically, because those turn into burrs, right?
Yep.
So you're just getting all your money back out, and I would like to build my capital to a point to where I can just have more capital to deploy into more build to rent at the same time. Yep. And I think I would probably end up doing something like half of them I do build to rent, half of them I flip just to continue making the capital. Like I don't need it for my living costs. That kind of is already taken care of. That's why I did franchise and everything. But I still want to get my capital to a point where I can do multiple build to rents. And I think even like recently, like you got rid of something to free up some capital, or a refi to free up some capital to like put the capital elsewhere. And you always need capital. So, and you don't want to get into, an over leveraged position to where you can't jump on a hot deal because you don't have the capital to do it. So I think I would probably get to the point where I've got probably 4 or 5 going on at the same time and be comfortable. And then if something pops up, still have some capital to toss down on, just maybe say the dirt and not even like have to deal with financing it or anything like that. So it's kind of where I'm at. Is I'm trying to do probably like after these 4, probably like 5 more until I'm probably kind of comfortable in a spot to really start just going at the whole build to rent model. So yes, that's the plan right now. And then the build to B&B is pretty similar as to build to rent and a little more attractive, honestly. And I don't think a lot of people are doing it. So I mean, that's just all about location though, right? So
Yeah,
we'll see what happens down the road.
Yeah, because if you find a good location for an Airbnb, like you're set, because you can almost 3-4 times what you would get as like a long-term rental.
Yeah.
Problem with that is finding the right financing for it, because lenders are kind of strict on Airbnb, but there's a ton of ways to do it. You just have to kind of show that the proof of concept is there, and then they're like, okay, we're cool, we'll lend to you.
Yeah,
you know.
sure.
But yeah, that's very similar to like what I'm kind of doing with the fix and flipping. You want to do, have multiple projects going at a time for fix and flip or new build for your active income to have like 3, 4 to 5 going at any given time, knowing that that's going to sell and you're going to get active income. And then you can cherry pick out kind of the ones that you want to keep as a rental and fur or build to rent. You can cherry pick the ones out like, actually, I might just keep this and refinance it out. And that way, you always have capital coming in. And then even with the ones you burr, like you can't obviously make that profit. You just get kind of your money back. You're never going too close to running on fumes, because once you get to that point, then you're kind of stuck and you got to wait for like some projects to finish, which I've talked to so many builders that are in that situation. I used to lend to new builds, and a lot of the times people are running on fumes, and I'm like, how are you even thinking about trying to build something right now? Like I'd be so stressed.
Yeah,
they're
exactly.
like, I need this thing to sell before I can build this, and like I only got like $10,000 to my name currently. I'm like, Jesus, this is stressing me out. Like,
right. Yeah.
they're like, can I get the loan? I'm like, I don't know. Like, do you want the loan right now? Because that's kind of scary.
Yeah, exactly. So I've heard similar like horror stories, and people just get over leveraged, right? And like you kind of said, shiny object syndrome, and they just want the next thing, and greed plays into that too. It's just something that I've really kept a good pulse on, not getting over leveraged, not worrying about, hey, I missed this deal. I miss it. I'm sticking to my numbers. We've looked at several properties and it's like, hey, this is our number. Like, can't do anything higher than that. Like, not just being really less risky, if you will. And I mean, risk is definitely coming back on with the market, but I don't think my risk is gonna ever get too overextended.
Well, you want to, like in real estate, you want to come into it with an abundance mindset, knowing that there's deals everywhere. Like you're never going to run out of deals. You just got to find them. And if you get emotional about it and like a deal comes by that's going to maybe be really risky for you and you're like, I need it, I just need it. Like you shouldn't put yourself in that position, because you're going to end up buying a deal. It's going to end up going wrong. And I've done it myself and I've learned from it. And I'm like, okay, not doing that again.
Yeah, exactly.
But like the one I'm selling off right now is a little bit of it was a risk, because it was outside of my buy box. It had a septic tank, and I started diving into it once we closed on it more. And I'm like, okay, now I started learning more about septic tanks, right? And I'm like, this is something I don't really want to deal with or open up the can of worms. So we decided basically, because we could have made money on it if we did it, but we could have also do 4 months of work or 3 months of work and lose money. I was like, I'd rather just sell it now and lose a little bit of money, like a couple $1,000s, and just get that capital back that I put into it and put it into other ones that are safe and going to get me some profit.
Yeah, exactly. I agree.
So yeah, you want to have an abundance mindset, not get into too risky deals. You want to over leverage yourself. You just want to do the numbers right, and trust the numbers.
Exactly.
There's going to be more and more deals that always come up. But let's try to move on to wrapping this up. I know we got a lot of things to do and don't want to take up too much of your time, but let's go through a few more things. I just wanted to ask you, for anybody that's trying to get into like investing, like some newer investors, whether that be fix and flip, whether that be new build, whether that be rentals, what is like one piece of advice that you would give them that you've learned learned from going to all those meetups that you wish you knew right away at the beginning?
Something I wish I knew at the very beginning would probably, I mean, if someone could just hand it over to me, like just breaking down all the numbers, I think, and understanding financing as well. I think like you can learn a lot of what you need to do, but then when it comes to the actual like underwriting, it's cut and dry right there. And then figuring out like the financing, the costs of all that, because I feel like people focus on the front end of doing deals and finding deals, and then it's like, oh, how do we fund this? And how much is the capital going to cost? And then also that comes with, not that I kind of knew this, but a lot of people don't, is that you do need cash to even start a deal. Unless you're using like private money, but like you're using hard money, you've got to have, I tell people they need to have at least $50,000 to start, because you've got to complete the work until you can get draws. And then you've got your $30,000 to $50,000 just cycling until you complete the project. So a lot of people in the beginning, they don't understand. They think, oh, we can just go get funded. They don't understand the LTV of loans and how much capital they're going to have to inject, even on the front end of the loan, let alone the operating capital. So that was probably a big thing. I think a lot of these newer guys will jump in and they're like, I knew I had to have 15% of, say, the purchase price, but I didn't know I had to have another 30 grand to operate throughout, say, 4 months on a new build. So now you've got 15% in the deal, and then you've got another 30 to 40, 50,000 kind of just circulating until you complete the work. So I think that's a huge tidbit that not a lot of people talk about and understand until they actually get too far deep sometimes.
Yeah, and I think you hit a really good point there, because all we see on social media is like, you can get into real estate, no cash, you don't need cash, you just do it. So many ways to do it. It's like, yeah, there's so many ways to do it, but I mean, if having cash is something you kind of need to do, whether that's through a partner, whether that's through private money, like getting a loan from someone to start. But like you said, with hard money, like people say, oh, it's 85% LTV and we fund 100% of the rehab. That doesn't mean that they're going to give you that 100% of the rehab. Like, it means they're going to reimburse it to you as you start spending to do the rehab. So you need 10 to 15% to close. Then you need to spend like $10,000 to get the project going. Then you submit a draw from the lender to give you that $10,000 back, and then you do it again, vice versa. People do fail to realize, like, you don't just get, like, they're not just going to give you money. Like, and it makes sense. Like, why would I let you close on a property, give you the $100,000 of rehab you need right away? Because you could just run away with it if you wanted to. Like, it's a huge risk. Now, you could find like someone, like a close rich friend or family member or someone that will do a deal with you like that, or as you gain a relationship, you will. But in the beginning, for sure, I think you hit it right on the head. You do need some capital, whether that's through like you or having it, or your partner having it, to feel comfortable and get the project going until you build a relationship to maybe have better terms. And a lot of people fail to realize that, because I used to talk to so many people that came to me for lending when I was a private lender, and they're like, can I do this deal? I'm like, yeah, how much do you have in the bank? They're like, I got like 10,000. I'm like, no, you can't. Like, you need
Exactly.
They're like, what do you mean? It's like 90% LTV and 100% like rehab. I'm like, yeah, but you need 10% down. You need reserves to protect us. You need to draw like money to put into the construction so that you can draw from it. And he's like, I'm like, that's going to equal like 40 grand. You only have 10. He's like, oh, and they end up being like, what the heck? But I think that's a fail. It's just from society and social media kind of just putting out like little sales points of them trying to sell their courses and things like that. Like, you can do it with no money. Technically you can, but let's just say
if you're wholesaling,
it's not as easy as people make it seem.
It's
possible, but you do want to have some capital. And it'll just make you feel more comfortable and more confident, because if you mess up, you're not going to go bankrupt.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's an awesome point that someone hasn't brought up yet. So that's cool. And then you said that you learned a lot yourself, right, from going to meetup, watching videos, reading books. Do you have anything that you would recommend to anybody that can be like a really good information place to get started at, that you utilize to get going? Because without a mentor, obviously, you probably did a lot of self-educating. There's some things that you would recommend.
Honestly, the biggest thing would be just going to as many meetups as you can, local real estate meetups, and just talking to as many people as you can, doing what you want to do. That was my biggest, that's where I learned the most. I was the guy in the room asking the speaker 10 questions back to back to back to back, and was just trying to figure every little nitty gritty out. I've got pages of notes in my phone from these meetups that I've taken while I've been at those. goes. I've talked to a couple people recently. It's like, just go to local meetups and just network your ass off. Like, literally, I think that's the best way to learn. And you can read as many books as you want, but there's a lot of fluff out there. And to get the real deal info, you got to go meet these people face to face and talk to them and ask them the hard, real questions to get the real answers that you need. And let's be honest, people are face to face. People tend to give more info and not lie to your people's faces. But behind the screen, people tend to put a lot of fluff out there or just brush you off or whatever. So I always tell people, like, on the psychology tip, just go face to face, meet so many people, just dive in, because I honestly believe connecting with other people, there's no other better way to learn something rather than doing something as well. You can read as many books as you want, but you got to talk to the people that are actually doing it.
Yeah, and that's 100% true. And people, like, even if you're a new investor, if you go to real estate meetups, like, the cool thing about real estate is everybody's there trying to learn and help each other out. Like, even if I was there, say I'm more experienced than you, like, if you came up to me and asked me questions, I'm going to tell you whatever I can to try to help you, because real estate's just a team game of it. Who knows, eventually you guys will cross paths with that person in the future. You guys can help each other out. So everybody thinks that way, like an abundance mindset. I mean, you might run into some people that are very, like, greedy and they just try to do it all themselves.
Yeah.
But you'll be able to call out those people pretty quick, and you just stay away from them. And they usually don't go too far in real estate because they get too greedy. They start, like, being more selfish, and people realize not to work with that person. And it's kind of funny how small the real estate network is. You think it's huge, but, like, you start realizing which people stink, which people are great. And, like, even you, like, I think I had a person send me a deal once, and I sent it to you, and I was like, "This looks like a good deal." And you're like, "Who sent you that?" And then I said, I told you the name, and you're like, "Stay away, because that guy is one of the worst real estate investors in the area." And then you started sending me all these things of people, like, calling them out. And I'm like, oh, I would have never known that. And he was reaching out to, like, not even me, he was reaching out to my New England partners. Big deal. And my New England partner was like, "This looks pretty interesting." And then I immediately hit them up, and I was like, "Stay away from him." I just talked to Adam. Adam knows him from the building community, and he's one of the worst people to deal with. Like, he doesn't pay investors, he doesn't pay money back, and it's just funny how you can find that. So
for sure.
But all right, let's wrap this on up. I just want to give you a minute or two just to let the audience know, like, how they can reach out to you. So, like, social media handles, meetups that you go to, or even running the 10. If you do any, like, charity events, what your business links are, or even, like, your phone number, email, if anybody has any questions, how to reach out to you, and take it from there.
Cool. Yeah. I kind of frequent a lot of the Charlotte local real estate meetups, and don't have a meetup right now. Might have a podcast in the future. I'm kind of interested in that. But other than that, you can just find me on social media, Instagram at The Real ACOZZ. It's The Real ACOZZ.
Awesome. And I'm going to put that all in, like, the description of this too, so you guys can just click or search him that way as well. Adam's awesome. You guys should reach out to him. He's super informative, and if you have any questions about building and stuff, he's always there to help. Even when I ask him stupid questions, he helps me. So
you send him over. I'm all ears.
But all right, Adam, thank you for coming on. This was awesome. And yeah, we'll be in touch and have you on again soon. And hopefully by then you're going to have some build to rents finished, some Airbnbs going on, and you'll be far ahead of what you expected you think you're going to be at.
For sure. I appreciate it, man. Thanks for having me.